Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford. Dan Casper here with you. A little bit of a shorter episode of the podcast, but hey, we got that business of sports segment in a separate podcast form. Still on the Man Cave Podcast, just its own segment over there. So if you want to tune into that, we talk a little bit about Super Bowl commercials and this new sports streaming package, which a bunch of networks are apparently combining for. So you can check that out. But on this episode of the podcast, we're going to talk some Packers. It looks like the Packers have got their main position coaches hired on the defensive side and maybe switching up to the 4-3. Who are some of the players that may benefit the most from that? I got my thoughts on that. But we lead off talking some Bucs hoops. Bucs falling again. They're 1-4 on that West Coast trip. Khris Middleton now hurt. Trade deadline's coming up tomorrow. We're recording this on Wednesday. So we've been hearing rumors about the Bucs potentially making some moves with Khris Middleton injury. Does that make it a little bit more important for the Bucs to make a move? Again, we don't know how long he's going to be out. We don't know that yet. But let's assume it's going to be for a little bit. And with the trade deadline coming up tomorrow, I mean, it's due tomorrow. Do you feel like the Bucs, is it a little bit more important for the Bucs to make a trade? Maybe a little bit of a bigger trade now at this point. Maybe a guy like Murray from Atlanta. Yay or nay? You think it's a little bit more important? The other part here, which we'll get up, we'll talk a little bit about this coming up here in just a little bit. But Packers seem like they've got their main position coaches all filled out on the defensive side. They're transitioning to a base 4-3. Again, we're just, for argument's sake, I know it's a lot of it is nickel and maybe even a little 4-2-5. But for argument's sake, let's just, call it what it is, base 4-3. Who do you think, player-wise, will benefit the most from the Packers transitioning, switching it up to this style of defense? And do you like that the Packers are going to this style, to a little 4-3, moving away maybe from a traditional 3-4? All right? Hit me up with some text. I may turn one of those into a poll question, but I'll keep you posted on there. But I'm curious to get your thoughts, all right? So hit me up with that text, tweet, Facebook message, whatever the case may be. So we've got the NBA trade deadline tomorrow. Bucs 1-4 on their road trip, which also is 1-4 during the Doc Rivers era. And I've been trying to find some rumors and rumblings out there. We've highlighted different names with the Bucs. One now that's kind of popped up, and we mentioned him kind of quickly yesterday. But now Andrew Wiggins is a name being attached to the Milwaukee Bucks, according to Jake Fisher from Yahoo Sports. And I was reading a little bit from this. It says here's a little bit. The Warriors and head coach Steve Kerr in particular are fond of Portis because of his toughness and shooting ability. Those same traits, though, and their lack of front court depth are why the Bucs are reluctant to deal Portis. It seems that other deals may be easier for the Bucs to pull off at this point, but their pursuit of Wiggins indicates that they're looking at any and every option to improve their perimeter defense. While new head coach Doc Rivers should help improve their play on that side of the ball, he can only do so much with their current roster. And as we mentioned, this was a shout-out from Justin Garcia, who Bucs radio analyst. If you look at the last 8 games, small sample size, but you look at the last 8 games, last few games, they are defensively have been the 8th best defense, and it was 8 games, and 5 of those 8 games going up against some of the better offensive teams in the league. The downside of all that is like, well, how come they're not winning more games? Their offense is kind of taking a little bit of a hit here too. Complementary play, right? How many times have we talked about complementary play with some of our favorite teams this year? Packers, complementary offense, complementary defense. Brewers, seems like that's been a thing for the last couple years. One year it's really good pitching, not good offense. Another one is, then it flip-flops, really good offense, not good pitching. So, again, without knowing the full details of Khris Middleton's injury, I feel like the Bucs may see this as like, okay, now we for sure have to make a move. That we need a little bit more help here. Maybe they're looking at a guy now that, for maybe what, last week you're looking at guys that, okay, we don't necessarily need a ton of scoring from this option. We're just going to bring him in for their defensive play. Like a Grant Williams or a Wright from the Wizards. You're not really relying on them to be offensive players. You're bringing them in mostly to be defensive players. But I do wonder, depending on the news that they get from Middleton's injury, does that process change? Does that thought process change a little bit to where it's like, okay, he's going to be out here for a little bit. Looking at how our offense has been, maybe we do need a little bit more offense along with with an improvement in defense. So, yeah, we may have to up the ante. We may have to up the packages that we're offering here and go after a guy like Murray, go after a guy like Wiggins potentially. I feel like the Bucs now, it's kind of on the fence. Like, I felt like they were going to make a move, but maybe a small move. I feel like now that pressure's kind of on, and I think they may make a couple moves or one oh, okay move. They might have to give up Bobby Porter, though. They might have to give up Bobby Porter. And that's, I know he's a fan favorite, and I know the Bucs love him too. Front court depth, you're kind of looking at that, but you got to make a tough decision here. And the thing, it's just one game, but like last night too, where the Bucs really needed Bobby Portis to kind of step it up and fill a big time offensive need. 5 points, 31 minutes. No Middleton, no Damian Lillard. Got to get better offensive production than that. So you might have to see Pat Connaughton go, Bobby Portis go, Cameron Payne go, Portland's second round pick. So I do feel like the Bucs are going to make a move by tomorrow, a couple moves. Either one pretty big move, and when I say big move, I'm kind of talking about like the Murrays and the Wiggins and such. It's either going to be one of those or maybe a couple of smaller ones, like maybe they bring in DeLon Wright or a Grant Williams. Those guys in too. We'll see. But I think, yeah, the whole Middleton thing now kind of throws a wrench into this. They need a little bit more help. And considering how well the Cavs have been playing, the Knicks have been playing, we know the Celtics are probably the cream of the crop up there. But the way that those other two teams are playing, Philadelphia's, without Joel Embiid, they're probably going to fall down a little bit. But Cleveland and the Knicks, man, they're looking good right now. They're looking really good. They're playing some really good basketball. Cleveland's 9-1 in their last 10. So are the Knicks. Cleveland's on a 6-game winning streak. Those two teams, Knicks made a move a little bit earlier this season. R.J. Barrett getting traded to the Raptors. They're going to be pesky teams. They're going to be really good teams too. And when you look at the Knicks and Cleveland, they play a solid defense too. In fact, when you look at it from the Eastern Conference side of things, Knicks and Cavs are the top two in terms of defensive points allowed. They're second and third overall in the entire league. The only team better than them is, just across the border, the Minnesota Timberwolves, giving up 107.1 points per game. Yeah, I think the Bucs are going to make some moves. It's going to be hard. and they're going to have to make some tough decisions, but they're going to make some moves, no doubt about it. All right, let's take a quick break here, and I want to talk a little Packers. We've got, it looks like, Packers, for the most part, have all their main position coaches hired on the defense, and it looks like a little bit of a change to the 4-3 base style defense. Let's talk about that coming up after these quick words. We are always looking to save a little money in our pockets, but we still need our essentials like our grocery items. So how do you save money while also getting what you need for your family? Hy-Vee Perks. If you shop at Hy-Vee, you're already getting a great deal on quality items throughout the store. But now you can save more money with Hy-Vee Perks on different items each week. Saving some money is easy if you shop at Hy-Vee in Eau Claire. So take advantage of these awesome deals and sales and stop on over at Hy-Vee in Eau Claire today. Are you thinking of taking a spring break trip this year? Or maybe you're already eyeing up that summer vacation, but you're not quite sure if you have the proper transportation for those road trips. Hey, that's where Toyson Ford can help you. Toyson Ford has a wide selection of new and used vehicles for you to check out. And at Toyson Ford, they treat you like an honored guest. They will work with you on financing no matter what your budget may be. So if you're looking for that new vehicle this year, head to Toyson Ford, located at 1000 Chippewa Crossing Boulevard in Chippewa Falls. So, Packers making some changes to some defensive coaches. We know that they got a new defensive coordinator in town, Jeff Hafley, coming over. And Packers also making a couple changes to some position coaches. So, we mentioned Vince Ogobase yesterday. He's a defensive line coach. He's going to actually be the assistant defensive line coach for the Packers, because their pass rush specialist coach, Jason Rebovich, is actually going to transition to the defensive line, be the main defensive line coach there. Packers bringing in a new linebackers coach / run game coordinator, Anthony Campanelli, from the Dolphins. Again, if you are a Hard Knocks observer, you probably recognize the name because I can't play the clip. I'd love to, because you might want to run through a wall after listening to it, but you'd have to bleep out every other word and it wouldn't just make any sense if you kind of get what I'm getting at. So, but he brings in a fiery personality. He is well thought of across the league. Giants interviewed him for their defensive coordinator spot. The Philadelphia Eagles were apparently trying to bring him over to be their linebackers coach. He is coming over to Green Bay, and then it was announced or reported last night by Rob Demovsky that the Packers are bringing in former Chargers defensive coordinator Derek Ansley to be their new pass game coordinator. Also, probably going to work with the corners. That's where his background is, working with defensive backs and such. So it seems like the Packers got their main position coaches in place on the defensive side. Probably still going to hire some assistants and maybe some quality control ones over there too. But for the most part, they've got their main ones. They're keeping Ryan Downard as defensive backs coach as well. So they've got their main defensive coach there, which means they're also, for argument's sake, we know a lot of it, majority, is played in nickel. But for argument's sake, playing in a 4-3 base defense now. Who do you think, player-wise, will benefit the most from the Pack moving to a 4-3? I've got a couple names. Here. One, I think Quay Walker is going to be a guy that could benefit from this. Strong side, weak side. My guess, and I could be completely wrong, my guess would be weak side. Gets to roam around a little bit more. Doesn't have to worry about the tight end, even though, he is a bigger linebacker, so maybe they want, when I say bigger, taller linebacker, so maybe they'd actually want him over there with the with the tight ends. But with his skill set, you maybe want him to roam the field a little bit more, helping out in the run game. My gut tells me he'll be a weak side linebacker. But I think that's a guy that could benefit from transitioning to this style of defense. You're allowing him to use his skill set to be all over the field, a little bit more across the field here. But I also think, too, when you transition to this, linebacker position kind of moves up in terms of importance. Now, do you bring back Devondre Campbell? A guy that maybe we thought Packers would move on to create some cap space this offseason. Now do you think about keeping him to be a part of this defense? You got Isaiah McDuffie, who's also entering his last year. Or does Green Bay say, we're still going to move on from Campbell, maybe bring in a younger replacement for him? But I think now, with this style of defense, you got to look at that linebacker position. And is he a guy, and, if Quay moves to, like, weak side, is Isaiah going to be the middle linebacker with the green dot? Is that going to be a rookie? I mean, I would think it's probably going to be maybe McDuffie, but I could be completely wrong there. Or maybe that's why they want to keep Campbell, to have that green dot there. Guy that calls the plays. But now I think that linebacker position kind of moves up on the list, right behind safety, as in terms of, like, they got to address that, maybe get more depth there, maybe get a replacement for Devondre Campbell. But I do think Quay Walker is a guy that could benefit from this style. When I think of 4-3 defenses and some linebackers, Greenlaw from the 49ers, you want to go a little old school, maybe like a Lance Briggs, who was a weak side linebacker with the Bears. We know how good he was in that role, right? Go a little bit further to a Derek Brooks type of linebacker on that weak side. That would be amazing if Quay Walker could transition into that type of role. I think another player that could benefit from this is Kenny Clark. You're going to have Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, Lucas Van Ness on the ends, hand in the dirt sort of thing. Now you're going to have Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, Carl Brooks, Slayton, whoever. But I think Kenny Clark's going to be a guy now that's going to benefit from having, either Rashawn or one of those ends with their hand in the dirt next to him. Not necessarily going to have to be like one of the two down linemen there where the offensive line can really focus. And Kenny Clark's coming off of one of his best statistical seasons of his career. But I think he is a guy that can benefit from this style of defense. I think that's a guy that is going to maybe potentially wreak some havoc on that defensive line. I'm excited to see Kenny Clark in this style of defense. I think maybe we could see that game, his game, go up a notch. Putting him in position to affect games, as we like to say, right? So I think Kenny Clark's a guy that is going to benefit from this style of defense too. And I think with this style of defense, you're going to see a lot more guys closer to the line of scrimmage. We already know they want to play a little bit more aggressive in the on the corners. Press man, right? I mean, how many times have we gone through the quotes from Jeff Hafley about got to play press man, the ability to play press man. He loves to play press man. Expect that. Talked about single high safeties with another safety maybe playing a little bit more in the box, closer to the line of scrimmage. You're going to see a different defense this year. You're going to see a defense with a lot more players towards that line of scrimmage, quote unquote, maybe that's what we call aggressive, which I think a lot of Packers fans are going to be excited about. It's going to be different. It's not going to be a style of defense right now, at least from all indications. It's not going to be that style of defense that we've seen the last few years where it was, we're going to force offenses to drive the length of the field, force them to try to be perfect. It's not going to be that way. At least that's what it looks like right now, which I think a lot of Packers fans got to be happy about, intrigued about, excited about. Does it open it up for maybe some potential big plays? Possibly on the back end. But I'm excited to see this. The wave of 3-4. 3-4 was such, I remember I watched a Vince Lombardi documentary, A Football Life in Vince Lombardi, and was it Sonny Jurgensen, his Washington quarterback, came to the hospital and visited him, and he said Vince wanted to talk about the new 3-4 defense that was making the waves in the AFC. And I remember when Green Bay transitioned to a 3-4 defense when Dom Capers came in. When Mike McCarthy hired Dom Capers, it was a big deal, 3-4 defense. What did they do? They drafted Clay Matthews and B.J. Raji in that draft. 3-4 was kind of the style. Again, like, okay, we're going to go to this. Feels like now it's like, eh. And I think a lot of it has to do with the importance of the nickel corner. It's like, okay, we got to have 3 corners on the field. Base defense is kind of a thing of the past. More nickel, so you adjust that. But you're seeing some of those really good 49ers are 4-3. Jets 4-3. Seeing some teams kind of go back to that base 4-3 a little bit more. And I'm excited to see it. I'm intrigued to see this. I'm looking at a guy like a Rashawn Gary. Could he benefit a little bit more from this too? Hey, we're probably not going to see Preston Smith lining up in the slot if he's got his hand in the dirt. Probably not going to have to line up across the slot receiver or anything like that. Got to be happy about that. But I really hope Rashawn Gary, I think he's going to transition well. I think this benefits a guy like Lucas Van Ness a little bit too. And hopefully they can have like a Aiden Hutchinson, Bosa type of feel with this 4-3 and just get after the quarterback. Old school defensive ends and defensive linemen up there. Come on, baby. So I'm excited. I can't wait to see this go. How it all works out. But I do think, we know safety is a big position of need for the Pack. That linebacker position is something that they're going to have to take a look at too. Whether it's free agency, bringing in a veteran, maybe in the draft. They bring back Devondre Campbell? Got a big cap hit. Also a fairly sizable dead cap hit, but you do save a few $1 million if you move on from him. But I think that's now a question, one of the bigger questions they have to answer for themselves this offseason is not only safety, but that linebacker role. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see this group. It's going to be fun. All right, hey, that's going to do it for us on this kind of a quick episode of the Man Cave Podcast. Brought to you by our good friends again from Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford. Hey, big thanks, though. Been seeing an increase in listens, even some subscribers, follows, some reviews. Keep that up. If you got a few seconds, if you don't mind, give us a 5-star rating on like Apple and Spotify, positive review on Apple so others can find the podcast. And keep those listens coming, all right? I appreciate it. Thank you. Tip of the cap to you all for that. You have no idea how much that means. So be a friend, tell a friend, forward the Man Cave Podcast on to all your friends and family out there. But until next time, I'm Dan Casper, and I'll talk to you on the next episode of the Man Cave Podcast.